The dream of the founders of COSCA is to provide quality but affordable Catholic education to the youth.
Alright, good morning everyone. So before we let to proceed, I want everybody to please stand up as we need to feel the presence of the Lord. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father who art in heaven, holy be thy name. Thy kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And do not lead us into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Alright, so is everyone ready for today's discussion?
Yes.
Okay, so before we let to proceed, so I would like everybody to please pick up pieces of papers, and I want everyone to please stay calm and sit back and also relax as well. Alright, so before we let to proceed for today's discussion, we need to discuss all about communication. And I know everybody, if you here, familiar already for what we call the word communication. So from the word or from the question above, when does a communication system became a language? So,
Next.
okay, so we do have our teaching aims or learning objectives. So at the end of the lesson, the student must able to classify the development and evolution of language, and when does a communication system became a language. So the next is illustrate the development and evolution of language through ages. And for the last part, by the way, is we need to explain or elaborate more the communication method that has evolved into language. So I would like to have the floor to Ms. Antoinette, who will let to further explain more what are the communication are.
So good morning again, student. Thank you, Mr. Martinez, for that wonderful introduction. Now we're going to next question, please. Next slide. Next slide. So, when does a communication system become a language? But first, we were going back to the first origin of language. We already know what is language, right? Yes. So, in introduction, speech is only one of several means by which humans communicate, but it is the most common and efficient one. Besides the acoustic channel employed in speaking, people make use of other channels, especially the optical one. They do so whenever they make gestures or facial expressions when they write. But first thing first, we're talking about human language and how they develop human language. So since we're talking about human, we were going back to the child or the infant or toddler. So when we are a toddler or infant, let's just say 5 or 6 years old, diba? So during those age, we can or we don't like a speed up of writing. Instead, we utter a word of like small sentences or small word. Like for example, mama, papa. Or in the presentation above, we were talking about the gestures or head, like no. The child or the infant says no when they do this. Right? Yes. So that is the communication of a child, and that is the development of a human language. So in fast forward, when they are like 10 years old, 11 years old, they will develop much more or they create much more of words. Like they can communicate well to other person, right? Yes, so we must remember that facial expression is very powerful when we communicate to other people, right? Yes, okay. Next slide, please. So that is the example pictures of facial expression and the speech. By the way, speech is the one of you produce sounds. Okay, when you produce sounds to other people. But speech is required for a one person to talk, just like what I did right now, and the audience will listen to my discussion. Next, please. So communication is common among animals. For example, honeybee. Do you know what is honey or honeybee? Bee? Yes. Okay. So a bee has a pack, right? Like they only have a leader, which is the queen. So the queen has the responsibility to take good care of all the pack. So one thing of the work of the leader or the queen bee is just to find an abundant nectar for them to live more. And when the bee or the queen bee find abundant nectar, all the pack will follow. So that is the communication. They don't need, like animals don't talk, right? Only human can talk. Okay, so animals don't talk, but through the sounds of bzzz, like that. So when they make sounds like bzzz, they already know or they can communicate or they understand the queen message. Do you understand any clarification about the communication and the speech? Okay, that is the development of the human language. Next slide, please. So, it is now generally accepted that communication among members of animal species is widespread and most vertebrates transmit information by acoustic signals. So, signals, let's just go back to the example, the bee. So, they signal or their communication is the sound, like zzz. And that sound is already commanding all the pack to follow the queen bee. So the variety and ingenuity of these communicative systems have stimulated a great deal of research on animal communication and its comparison with human speech. So in the modern human speech, which is the human, they have a theories, or let's just say the Homo sapiens. Is it correct? Homo sapiens or Homo sapiens? Okay, Homo sapiens. So Homo sapiens is a theory of a human evolution. So in researchers, they research about the human development. So the structures, we came from a monkey. So we came from a monkey to, as the time goes on, we become fully human being. But our language way back then is like, they don't really talk much. They do so like a gestures, right? So gestures, and they do have the leader. Okay, way back then, when we look back, we see a lot of gestures, or we see leader commanding their pack or commanding the tribe to follow. Okay, they have much more rules and regulation to follow, and that is communication for them to have peace on their community. Next slide, please. So that is the example of Homo sapiens. As you can see, from the monkey to human. Okay? So, the question is, that how did language evolve to become the most essential intrinsic tool human possess? The answer is because of its connection with culture and social behavior. Our language evolved because of our culture. Without language, we don't have the exist word culture and social behavior. But because of also the social behavior becoming the population size of the world become more and more and more, our language become what? Evolving. When it comes to intermixing. For example, oppa. In South Korea, in oppa, it means that kuya, right? But in the Philippines, kuya is cute. Like oppa, like we admiring because he is handsome or he is cute. But other countries, oppa is kuya. Like that is the evolution of language. It becomes smaller and smaller and smaller words. So now, next slide, please. Okay, so any question, any clarification regarding to my discussion? None? So I assume that you do really understand my discussion about the development of human language and the evolution of human language. Now I'm going to give the report to Jonalyn Torres for the next discussion.
Good morning, students. Are you still here? Okay, so before we proceed to our next lesson, let me just have a short recap on what Miss Antoinette discussed. Communication is common among animals, often through sounds or gestures. This has led to extensive research comparing animal communication and human speech. Human speech likely evolved a long time, but the exact process remains a mystery. So, okay, let's proceed to our next lesson. What is communication system? So, does anybody knows or have an idea on what is communication system? Okay, next slide, please. The communication system is a system model that describes a communication exchange between two stations, transmitter and receiver. Signals or information passes from source to destination through a channel. It represents a way in which the signal uses it to move a source towards its destination. Okay, next slide, please. A communication system is an integrated system of communications hardware. This can include transmissions, equipment, relay stations, tributary stations, and other data terminal equipment. A communication system can even include other communication systems. A good example would be a regional emergency response communication system that connects several different cities and allows them to respond to a disaster by integrating systems they have installed for their own police and firefighters. So, as one of the example, regional emergency response communication system that connects several different cities. So I'm going to discuss transmission equipment, relay stations, and tributary stations, and other terminal data equipment. So, transmission equipment means any object or objects by which the motion or prime mover is transmitted to a machine that is capable of utilizing such motion, includes shaft, pulley, and the next is relay stations. Relay stations are a radio station that receives a radio signals and retransmits them in order to extend their range. Okay. So next is tributary stations. Tributary stations means a aeronautical fixed station that may route, receive, or transmits message or digital data, but which does not relay except for the purpose of serving similar stations connected through it to a communication center. And the next is the other data terminal equipment. So other data terminal equipment in that is either destination or source for digital data. Examples are computer, printers, application servers, file servers, routers, and etc. Okay. So the main examples of communication system include, I'm going to write it on the board. So these are the examples of communication system: television, computer, and mobile phone. The sources of this system can be divided into electric, otherwise, or non-electric. These are the sources of an input or message signal. So, okay, next slide. Okay, does anybody knows or have an idea on what is portrayed here in the presentation?
Communication system now.
Okay, so as we see here, information source, to transmitter, channel, and then noise source, and then receiver to destination. So I have here an example which is from the radio. So information or issues, which is the information source, and then the transmitters are the broadcasters, which are the one who inform the people who are listening. So, okay, so the channel is the radio station. So the noise sources that comes from the radio stations are the radio waves, and then the receivers are the people who are listening in the radio. So destination, which are the feedback on how the people reacts on the information issues that are given. Just discuss what are the important parts of communication system. The important parts of communication system is the transmitter, channel, and the receiver. Okay, so the advantages of communication system is we can connect easily to the people who are listening. We can also give information to them by just listening in radios, watching in television. Okay, so the purpose of communication system is to inform, to express feeling, to imagine, to influence, and to meet social expectation. So the next discussion will be discussed by Miss Milky.
All right, good morning. Okay, so since the last reporter we already tackled or discussed about when does communication become language and what is communication system. So now for the next discussion, let's proceed to next slide, please. So the origin of language is quite an enigma. No one knows exactly how spoken and written languages came about or originated. So from the word no one knows. So let's go back to the word enigma. What does enigma means? Does anybody here knows what is an enigma? So enigma is a word or a situation that is difficult to understand or is a mystery, a mysterious one. So why is it? The question here is, why is it enigma? Over the centuries, there has been much speculation and several theories explaining its origins and language evolution. However, they have been challenged and only account for a small portion of what we know about human language today. As we go back, my question here is, why is the origin of language is difficult to understand? So why does language is really an enigma? Yes? All right. So enigma, it is because of the influencers. Why the influencers? It is because of their inferences or opinion. It is because of the opinions of them that have not been confirmed. However, as we can see in the presentation, we have these several theories explaining its origins and language evolution. So first, we have this, what we call bow wow. Bow wow is much likely a lyrebird, which is lyrebird is came from, it is an Australian bird, which humans started out mimicking the animal calls or the noises. So this is where it started. From the theory of bow wow, we have learned how to speak through mimicking, through gaya-gaya. So second, we have ding dong. Ding dong is actually based on the idea of sound symbolism. So from the word sound, it is where it is came from the what they hear or anything that surrounds them. So third, we have popo. Popo is words that evolved from our natural verbal. So from the word natural verbal, it is for example, when we are in pain, so we are gonna what? We're gonna yelp. We're gonna yelp because we are in pain, of course. So that is actually like, ouch. That is actually a one of the theories that is actually been confirmed that language is originated. Fourth, we have yo he ho. So these four theories are actually been confirmed. As for our research, these theories have been confirmed. Why it is difficult? Why is it mystery? Or why is it difficult to understand to the people why is language or when is language originated? So for our next discussion, I would give the floor to Mr. Joshua Linguist.
So, good morning everyone. How are you feeling today? So, are you all good? Okay. So, let's discuss about when does a communication system become language. So, next slide please. Okay, so the system of communication which relies on the vocal and nonverbal codes used in transferring information is called language. Okay, so the way of interchanging message or information between two or more people is called communication. So when you say communication, it is about it equals two or more people like me and the students talking about or interchanging words is that like information. So here I have a short presentation or a video to be shown, and please watch this video.
Communication is part of everything we do. It is the foundation of relationships and is essential for play, social interaction, and learning. What do we mean by speech, language, and communication? Speech means speaking with a clear voice in a way that makes the message interesting and meaningful, speaking fluently without repeating words or sounds, and being able to make sounds clearly so people can understand what you say. By language, we mean both talking, expressive language, and the understanding of language. Receptive language involves the understanding of words, sentences, instructions, and stories. Expressive language refers to how we express ourselves using words, putting these words in sentences, and telling stories. Communication is about using language or gestures in different ways to get your message across. For example, to ask a question or to share an opinion. Being able to consider other people's points of view, and using and understanding body language and facial expressions.
Okay, so thank you for watching the video. So, in addition, before hominids, animal species have a way of transmitting information themselves. So when you say hominids, it is like also known as the great apes. So the gorillas and chimpanzees, in particular from 5 to 8 million years ago, they possess a means of communicating. Similar to that is their closest primate relatives, are also known as the great apes in the wild. Okay, so the communication system of the early hominids likely used signals or that were both visual and acoustic. So before, hominids usually use visual or gestures like the hand signals and vocal sounds, as well as olfactory, or which means connected with the sense of smell, also used with the sense of smell. Okay, so the visual signals or gestures would have been made by various parts of the body, including their face. So when they communicate, they also include their face or facial expressions, something like that. Okay. And so auditory signals or the variety of vocalization, like their sounds, they usually use like the grunts or the barks like dogs, then hoots, howls, and etc. So, and they also have a non-vocal sound. One of them is the chest beating, when you say in the apes, and the ground stomping. Okay, so the meaning of these signals would have been limited to very basic comments, like the immediate environment, for example. They only react this. It is very limited. Like they only react if the environment, when they feel annoyed or surprised or fear, and etc. So it is clear that a vast distance had to be bridged between some such limited means of communication. A miracle system of full-blown language that modern humans have been making use for thousands of years. So humans usually have their own language today, different from the past years. Okay, so one may refer to the communication. system that precede full-fledged language as pre-language. So, pre-language. And when you say pre-language, it is a way of communicating without using words. Or, for example, like they only use gestures and facial expressions. Like, pre-language is commonly used like for a child, like children who cannot talk or communicate, like the little babies, like the 1-year-old, like that. Okay, so pre-language is extremely rough because it suggests an evolutionary from one stage to evolving hominids as they were occurring. So before some anthropologists have attempted to reconstruct the human evolution, the evolution of human communication. So one of them is Roger Westcott. Okay, so let me borrow some marker. Okay, so Roger W. Westcott. Okay, so he is the one of the anthropologists who postulated hand waving and vocal synchronization and among the members of a group for the group of Australopithecines. So, Australopithecines, like this. Okay, so when you say Australopithecines, is a type of a primate with both ape-like and human characteristics. So it is like a ape, but their characteristic is mostly like us humans. Okay, so fingerprinting and vocal imitation for Homo erectus. Homo erectus. Okay, so when you say Homo erectus, it is also known as the oldest known or early humans, like they are the past humans before. And when you say manual signing and unintelligible speech, like involving the use of meaningless syllables, is for the Neanderthals. Okay. Okay, when you say Neanderthals, it is also known as humans who lived over 40 years ago. So, writing and fully developed language, he reserved for later. Like, he reserved some writing and a fully developed language, he reserved it for the Homo sapiens. Okay, so Homo sapiens, it is a modern humans, means most of the common widespread species of primate. So most of anthropologists would probably find this claim too conservative. So its virtue is in its attempt to correlate the development of communicative channels, the visual and the acoustic. Like so, that's also the next lesson will be discussed by Sir Martinez. Thank you.
Okay, so good morning once again. So we need to discuss furthermore what communication is. Next slide, please. Okay, so based on this question, did the language affect the communication system in the society? So do you truly agree, guys, that our language literally affect the communication into today's generation, into our society? Okay, definitely correct. So language can barely affected into our society nowadays. So in what way? So basically, there are common ways for us to have that language or for that communication can lead us into a proper way or can lead us into our society nowadays. So basically, we do have some examples that could lead us or for a number of ways that can let to have a communication in our society. Like, for example, language of barriers. So with the language of barriers, we need to have in the language of barriers, we cannot let to have a proper communication if some language that really cause barriers in by communicating. Like for example, Tagalog, into Manila, their language is Tagalog, and also here in Negros Oriental is Bisaya. And do you really think, guys, that some Filipinos in Manila understand our generic language here in Negros Oriental? Definitely no, right? So, language is a system of communication consisting of sounds, words, and grammar, or the system of communication used by the people of particular country or profession. Even animals communicate. Birds use sound and movement to transfer information. Likewise, human beings use sound and movements like speech, gesture, communicate. And also, in that statement, by the way, it is a difference. It is like a comparison between animals and humans of how they like to communicate with each other. So if human does communicate, so also human communicate as well. So as based on the example that birds can let to have a can use communication by sound, movement, or to transfer information. So as well as human, but basically, we human have the exact, or like 80%, I guess, the exact proper communication. Even a 1-year-old child can let to communicate with her own mother or his or own mother. But with that statement above, it literally states that communication cannot us to have a communication, communication cannot to have a proper communication to each person we are talking to. So language is a fundamental factor leading and affecting communication. And with language is communication, and vice versa as well. It can also help with everyday tasks such as explaining issues and procedures, exchanging ideas or learning ideas. Being knowledgeable about language is a key for successful communication in relationships. And in the workplace as well, it would say that without language, we would not be able to communicate. And that is correct. So with that statement, on the last part, that I would say that without language, we would not be able to communicate. Do you agree with me, guys? Definitely correct. So without language, do you think that we can let to have a proper communication? That's correct. Is even sign languages, right? So we can truly understand, or I mean, like we cannot understand what they are talking to as well with us, a regular human, I mean, a regular person, I mean. So whether they have their own language as well as we. So with them, if you're gonna to have a sign language, they and also only deaf can understand with their own language as well as we ask. So in that statement above, it can truly let to have an explanation that knowledge can let to lead us into a proper way. So in what way that we can have a proper communication? By focusing what is right, for not like literally being patient, or use like simple language and avoid idioms, or avoid idioms and slang. Because basically some of us nowadays can have like a language or do communication exaggerated, right? Okay, like even like a simple communication, like dito ba, like like there are some point as well that we do have like they have a different styles of speaking their own language. But we are truly explaining right now the exact process of communication. So further with this, when communicating with people from different backgrounds or any different system, it is important for us to use a clear and concise language. Like in what way? Like speak slowly and clearly, and also be patient and understanding. Use gestures and visuals to help communicate your message. And if possible as well, guys, you need to use a translator or interpreter by following the steps. So Like for example, if you're gonna let the base that into any pageantry outside, like Miss Universe, they are using their own language. As we know that English is a like generic language for all, right? Okay, so since English language is a generic language for all of us, some of the countries, they uses their own language, but in order for the judges to understand well, they have an interpreter for them to interpret what they are speaking to or what they are talking to. So with that language, it is very important for us nowadays to have that kind of specific communication, because if you're gonna not to have proper communication, if you're gonna not to communicate others, then they understand and they can truly felt what you are talking about. So, like if you're gonna not to have a point right now, if I am a teacher, as right now I am a teacher and also your students, do you think that you understand what am I talking to it right now? Definitely, that is what we call communication. We have a proper, we let to communicate with each other by our own, and by understanding for what truly language is. So, next slide, please. Okay, so with that, what we call illustration, or illustration, it is a process of communication, like when we start language, society, communication, and individual. Of course, language is from the it could be on the top, and also next for that is the society and the communication and individual. Because if you think you as a person without talking for, like for example, you are an 18 years old now. So if you as a person, you don't know what truly language is in your 18 years of existence, do you think that valuable you are here in our society? Of course not, because you cannot let to differentiate what language and how to have a proper communication. And nowadays as well, into our society, we need to have a generalization for what communication is. Because if we're gonna let to differentiate three of those words, language, society, communication, it will lead you as a person itself. So you as a person, or it could be seen right there as an individual itself, you could have just a full package of communication by having those like language, society, communication. Because further for that, you could not to truly understand what are the deep definition of language. So that is all about language, or that is all about communication. So I hope truly, guys, you would let to understand the deep meaning about language, or how does communication affect into our system nowadays. So I would like to take a moment to the next reporter, or to the next reporter who would like to discuss furthermore about communication.
Okay, thank you, Sir Martinez, for that. And now let us head on to the generalization. Next slide, please. Generalization. Language and communication are essential for an effective conversation. Indeed, all the human beings in this world are communicating in their native languages. Language and communication are so closely intertwined that sometimes people cannot quickly diagnose their differences. As a result, they think both of them have the same meaning, but in reality, there exist some logical differences between language and communication. That is all. And before we end our discussion, any clarifications? Any questions? None? Okay, then that concludes our discussion. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so since we have already tackled about the process of communication and why is it important the communication is into our society nowadays. So I'll be providing you an assessment, guys, if you really understand our topic, which is what we call communication. So first, you need to illustrate the language through ages. And second, you need to write an essay about the language. that became the barriers in communication. So with this essay, it must have approximate 700 words, and it will gonna be written in a one whole sheet of paper. Okay. All right. So this will gonna let to help you to have an understanding if you really understand what really our topic for what we call communication. Okay. So have a wonderful day, guys. God bless you all.